Hey, everybody, and welcome to our deep dive today. You ever walk through a crowded place and just feel that little voice in your head saying, "Watch your wallet"?
Yeah.
Well, today we're going deep into the world of distraction and bump scams.
Okay.
Those sneaky tactics that criminals use to make us easy targets.
Right.
We're going to uncover the tricks they use, the psychology behind why they work, and most importantly, how you can avoid falling victim.
Sounds good.
It can be unsettling, right? Like, I consider myself pretty aware,
Mm-hmm.
but even I've had those moments where I'm so focused on getting somewhere or doing something that I'm not fully paying attention to my surroundings.
Yeah, I think we all have.
So let's break down exactly what we're dealing with here.
Right.
What exactly are distraction and bump scams?
Well, at their core, they're about manipulating your attention and using that split second of vulnerability to their advantage.
Hmm.
You could almost imagine like a magician using misdirection.
Right.
While your focus is on one thing,
Mm-hmm.
something else is happening right under your nose.
Okay, so it's all about creating that moment where you're not quite thinking straight.
Exactly.
But how do they actually do that? What are
Right.
the methods?
With distraction scams, one common tactic is verbal distraction.
Okay.
So picture this. You're walking down a busy street, and someone approaches you, asking for directions. Seems harmless enough, right?
Yeah, totally.
But while you're busy trying to be helpful, an accomplice could be swiping your wallet or phone from your bag.
Oh, so our good intentions literally backfire on us.
Exactly. And it's not always about being helpful either.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it's about exploiting that social pressure we all feel.
Right.
Think of the spilled drink scenario, or
yeah.
a classic example of physical distraction.
Uh-huh.
The scammer accidentally spills something on you.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're flustered and apologizing, even if it wasn't even your fault,
Right.
their partner's taking advantage of the chaos.
See, that's what gets me that split second where you're not even thinking about your belongings because you're so focused on not making a scene or just being polite.
Right.
It's like they're hijacking our social scripts.
Precisely. They turn our ingrained responses against us.
Wow.
And sometimes it's not even a person-to-person interaction.
Really?
They might stage an accident like a fender bender in a parking lot
Oh, gosh.
just to draw your attention away while someone else rifles through your car.
It's almost theatrical, the level of planning that goes into these things.
It absolutely is. And the more convincing the performance, the more likely you are to fall for it.
So distraction is all about shifting your focus.
Right.
But what about bump scams?
Yeah.
How are those different?
Bump scams rely on physical contact to create that distraction or disorientation.
Okay.
The simplest version is a straightforward bumper shove, often in a crowded place like a train station.
Okay. That one seems almost too obvious.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you notice someone bumping into you?
You'd think so,
Yeah.
but it's all about the timing and the context.
Okay.
In a crowded place where people are constantly jostling each other,
Right.
it's easy for a bump to go unnoticed, especially if you're distracted thinking about your to-do list or checking your phone,
Mm-hmm.
but it can get even more sophisticated than that.
Oh, wow.
We call these synchronized collisions,
Okay.
where two or more scammers will work in tandem.
Oh, gosh.
One bumps you from the side, throwing you off balance, while another uses that moment of confusion to lift your wallet.
That level of coordination is kind of impressive in a
Yeah.
twisted way.
It is.
So it's not just a random bump in the crowd, it's a carefully orchestrated maneuver.
Exactly. And just like with distraction scams, they might stage disruptions as part of the bump too.
Oh, okay.
They might bump into you
Yeah.
and then profusely apologize, making you focus on that interaction while an accomplice goes to work.
So it's not always a hard shove. It can be more about using that brief moment of contact to throw you off your game.
Right?
It's like they're hacking our sense of personal space.
That's a great way to put it. They use that invasion of your personal space to their advantage.
So we've covered distraction and bump scams separately,
Uh-huh.
but I had a feeling they're not always mutually exclusive, right?
You're absolutely right. In fact, the combination of distraction and a bump can be incredibly effective.
Oh, wow. Okay, paint me a picture.
Okay.
How would that play out in a real-world situation?
Imagine you're on a packed train trying to make your way through the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Someone bumps into you, maybe a little harder than necessary,
Okay.
and at the same time, another person asks you for directions.
Oh, God.
You're suddenly dealing with multiple sensory inputs, the physical jolt of the bump, and the verbal request for information.
Right.
And it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
So it's like a 1-2 punch that leaves you disoriented and vulnerable, and
Yeah.
in that moment of confusion, they strike.
That's exactly how it works. It's about creating a perfect storm of distraction, both physical and mental,
Right.
to exploit those few seconds where your guard is down.
This is getting scary. I'm starting to feel like I need eyes in the back of my head.
Well,
But I guess that's why we're doing this deep dive,
Right.
to be aware of the tactics so we can avoid falling victim.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to personal safety.
Hmm.
By understanding these scams, we can arm ourselves with the tools to recognize and avoid them.
Speaking of avoiding them, are there certain places where these scams are more likely to occur?
Absolutely.
Like, are there any hotspots we should be extra cautious in?
These scams thrive in environments with crowds and movement places where it's easy to blend in and even easier to create a distraction.
Oh.
Think bustling public transport, crowded shopping malls, busy parking lots.
You're basically describing my daily life.
Well,
But you're right, it makes sense.
Yeah.
The more chaos, the easier it is to slip under the radar.
right.
And now that you mention it, I'm starting to realize just how often I've probably been in situations where I could have been a target.
It's a common realization. Most people don't even consider themselves potential victims until they start learning about these tactics.
So we know how these scams work and where they're most likely to happen.
Right.
But how can we actually recognize the signs of a potential scam happening in real time? Like, what are the red flags we should be watching out for?
That's a great question, and it's key to staying safe.
Yeah.
There are a few telltale signs that should raise your suspicion.
Okay.
First, pay attention to any unusual physical contact, especially in crowded areas.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a forceful shove. Even a slight bump or brush against you that feels out of place could be a sign that something's up.
Interesting. So it's about trusting that gut feeling if something feels off.
Right.
Like if someone bumps into you on a wide open sidewalk, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you're packed into a crowded train and feel a nudge, it's worth being extra vigilant.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Your instincts are a powerful tool, and you should never dismiss them.
Hmm.
Another red flag is overly apologetic behavior.
Oh,
If someone bumps into you and then launches into this cascade of apologies,
right.
that could be a tactic to distract you while an accomplice takes advantage of the situation.
It's like they're trying to overcompensate to make you feel like it's your fault for being in their way.
Exactly. They use guilt and social pressure to cloud your judgment.
Wow.
And finally, pay attention to your own body.
Okay.
If you suddenly feel off balance or disoriented, check your belongings immediately.
Right.
That sudden jolt could be a sign that someone has just lifted your wallet.
It's like they're aiming to disrupt your equilibrium both physically and mentally.
That's a great way to put it. They want you off kilter so you're less likely to notice what's happening.
Okay, this is all super helpful, but let's get to the practical stuff.
Okay.
How can we actually protect ourselves from these scams? What are the most effective strategies?
The first line of defense is always situational awareness.
Okay.
In crowded places, stay alert and pay attention to the people around you.
So ditch the headphones and put the phone away, especially in crowded areas?
Yeah, it's not about being paranoid. It's about being present. Keep your head up.
Yeah.
Scan your surroundings. Be mindful of anyone getting too close or acting suspiciously.
Okay, what about our belongings? Any tips for keeping those safe?
Absolutely. Secure your valuables.
Yeah.
Don't keep your wallet or phone in your back pocket. That's practically an invitation.
Right.
Use a bag with a zipper or a secure compartment.
Okay.
Or consider a money belt or hidden pockets for added security.
And what if someone does approach us, especially with a distracting request, like asking for directions or help with something? How should we react?
You don't have to be rude, but limit your engagement with strangers in those situations.
Okay.
You can politely decline their request or keep your responses brief and to the point. Maintain a safe distance and don't let them into your personal space.
So basically, don't get drawn into a long conversation or an elaborate interaction.
Right.
Keep it short, sweet, and keep moving.
Exactly, and trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't hesitate to remove yourself from a situation or walk away from someone who makes you feel uncomfortable.
It's like that saying, better safe than sorry. Sometimes our gut feeling is our best bodyguard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to be a hero.
Right.
If you see something suspicious or think someone might be trying to pull off a scam alert security or notify the authorities.
Right. It's about protecting ourselves and each other. Sometimes the best way to stop a scam is to shine a light on it.
Exactly.
But I think we need to take this a step further. Let's try a little thought experiment.
Okay.
Imagine you're walking through a crowded parking lot and someone bumps into you. They apologize profusely, but you notice they're lingering a little too close for comfort. What would you do?
That's an excellent scenario to consider
Mm-hmm.
because it highlights how these scams can happen in seemingly ordinary places. So what would I do? First, I'd acknowledge the bump, but maintain a safe distance.
Okay.
And then I discreetly check my belongings, my pockets, my bag to ensure everything is still where it should be.
Okay, that makes sense. A quick check to make sure nothing's gone missing. But what if something is missing?
Mm.
What's the next step?
If I discovered something was missing, I would calmly but firmly confront the person and demand they return my belongings.
Okay.
I would also try to attract the attention of others nearby,
Right.
because witnesses can be incredibly helpful in these situations.
So don't be afraid to make a scene if you have to. And it's a good reminder that there's strength in numbers. Witnesses can deter a scammer and provide support if things escalate.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that you have the right to call for help.
Mm-hmm.
In a parking lot, there are likely security cameras or bystanders who might have seen the incident.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hesitate to call the police if you feel threatened or if your belongings have been stolen.
And even if the person denies taking anything, having witnesses can be crucial for reporting the incident and potentially recovering your belongings.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about what to do in the moment, but what about preventative measures? Are there things we can do in our daily lives to make ourselves less likely targets?
Absolutely. One of the simplest but most effective things is to be mindful of your surroundings.
Okay.
Scan the area, be aware of who's around you, and trust your gut if something feels off. It's also a good idea to avoid walking around with your head buried in your phone.
Right.
Not only does it make you less aware of your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
but it also signals to potential thieves that you're distracted and vulnerable.
It's like wearing a sign that says free stuff here.
Exactly. And think about your routines.
Okay.
If you always take the same route home from work or frequent the same coffee shop every morning, consider mixing things up.
Okay.
Scammers often target people who are predictable and inattentive.
So it's about staying one step ahead.
Right.
Don't be an easy target.
That's a great way to put it. And if you're traveling, be extra cautious, especially in unfamiliar areas.
Okay.
Tourist spots are prime targets for scammers because they know people are likely to be distracted in carrying cash or valuables.
So whether you're at home or abroad, it's about staying vigilant. Don't let your guard down, even in familiar surroundings.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about protecting ourselves.
Right.
We can also protect others by sharing this knowledge with friends and family, particularly those who might be more vulnerable to these tactics, like older adults or people who aren't as familiar with these scams.
That's a great point. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and knowledge is our most powerful weapon. By talking about these scams, sharing our experiences, and spreading awareness, we can create a safer environment for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. It's about building a community of awareness and empowering each other to stay safe.
Wow. It's amazing how even a simple conversation can make you rethink your entire approach to personal safety.
It really is.
I know I'm going to be much more mindful of my surroundings from now on.
That's great to hear. It's not about living in fear, though.
Right.
It's about being empowered.
Mm-hmm.
The more you know about these tactics, the less likely you are to fall victim.
Well, so true. So as we wrap up our deep dive into distraction and bump scams, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that these scams are more common than we realize. But awareness and proactive measures can dramatically reduce your risk.
Yeah.
Remember to be present, secure your belongings, and trust your gut feeling if something seems off. Even a little bit of knowledge can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of sharing this information with others. We can all play a role in protecting ourselves and our communities by spreading awareness and looking out for each other.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
Imagine you've just successfully avoided becoming a victim of one of these scams.
Okay.
Now think about someone you care about, a parent, a friend, a grandparent, someone who might be more susceptible to these tactics.
Right.
Share this knowledge with them, talk about it, role-play scenarios, and empower them to stay safe. Because protecting ourselves often involves looking out for each other.
That's such a powerful point. We're all in this together, and knowledge is our best defense. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Stay safe out there, and remember, a little awareness goes a long way.